everyone, and welcome to another video from Colour with Claire. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make paint from chalk pastel. Now, it's not something I've ever seen done. It probably has been, I'm not saying it hasn't, but I've never actually seen it been done. And I'm going to be showing you how to do that with the Faber Castell Polychromos pastels. Now, we all know and love Faber Castell Polychromos pencils, and the colour range is absolutely wonderful. We know that it's very, very high end, really high quality pigments used, etc. So we know we're going to get a good result from this before we even begin. Now, you can of course get the Albrecht Dürer watercolour pencils, which are the water soluble medium, and they come in all of the colours of the Polychromos as well. But if you do have a set of chalk pastels, this is showing you that you can also create a water-soluble medium from a dry artist stick like this. Now, I know that you can already do this with Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2 water-soluble crayons, but they are actually made of wax. They're not made of chalk. So I know you can do that with these, but I didn't realise that you could do it with these. Now, I did review these a couple of weeks ago on my channel. If you want to go and check out the full review there, you can do. So I'm going to open them up. This is a set of 36 that I've got here. There are larger and smaller sets available. And I've also got a little postcard here from Hannah Carlson's Magic Grinning postcard book. So what I'm going to do is going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to show you a couple of different techniques that you can use to create paint from chalk. So first of all, I'm going to show you the more wetter technique, and that is where you will add water to the chalk pigment itself. Now, I've got a plate here, I've got a ceramic plate. You can use an artist palette or anything that's non-porous that you've got on hand, and that's just going to mix our colours. You'll also need a blade. Now, obviously, you must be very, very careful using this. This is a craft knife that I'm using. It's super blunt anyway because I've used it an awful lot and I do need to change the blade. But always, always be careful when you're using sharp implements, goes without saying. So I'm going to take one of the colours. I'll take this one here. This is number 226. And as I say, all of these pastel sticks correspond perfectly with the pigment colours of the Polychromos pencils. So you could, in theory, use your pencils for the detailed work to get into the really tiny spaces, and then the pigment wash of paint to create a background area or your larger areas. Now, once you've scraped some of the pigment off, a little bit does go a long way, so don't go mad. You'll need to get yourself some water and a paintbrush, which I've got here. And then you can just dot a little bit of water just next to your pigment there. And then just drag in all of the chalk into the water. So you can see straight away that we've made a lovely paste. And you do need to kind of gauge, just like when you're making a cake, whether you need to put some more water to it or some more pigment to it. So just try a little bit at a time and see how you go. But as you sort of mix them together, you'll see that the chalk does start to disintegrate, and it leaves you with a lovely, rich, vibrant colour to work with. Okay, so pop the water down. So I'll take some of this beautiful, I think it's like a carmine red, this one. It's a pinkish red. And we'll pop it on this beetle here and see what he looks like. So I'm using a very thin modelling brush to get into some smaller areas here, and you can do that as well. Or you can use a big fat brush and create a big wash all over the background or wherever you want to put it. But that's what I'm choosing to work with at the moment. So you just keep picking up the pigment, and as you can see, it's really smooth. It's not chalky or grainy at all, and it's really vibrant as well. So I'm just popping it in all of these little areas around our beetle. And there we are. So you can add a little bit more here and there if you don't think it's saturated enough. And there we go, I think that's absolutely beautiful. So if you do prefer working with a brush and a paint medium, this would be a really good alternative to you if you do enjoy the quality of Faber-Castell and the colours in the Polychromos range. So I'm going to do the other side as well. Let's make him match. And it's really quick as well, this medium. You can be really fast with it. Obviously, if you're using pencils, it'd take a lot longer to get a nice smooth surface, a smooth finish on your work, but this is just very easy. Now, if you are colouring or painting in books which are thinner than a postcard kind of stock, so if you're painting in a normal kind of standard colouring book, you might want to use the next technique I'm going to show you in a moment. But this is very much a wet media, and it looks absolutely lovely. Can you believe that just from a small amount of pigment that you can get this beautiful richness of colour? Okay, so next up, I'm going to be showing you how to blend first with this technique. So you want to wipe off your paintbrush, get yourself another colour. So I'm going to go for this one here, it's 109. Put some pigment on your plate or your palette. They're very strong as well, these. They're not as weak and as crumbly as normal pastel, chalk pastel sticks. So you can get a lot of pigment from them and they won't break and crumble all over the place. So I'm adding my water in as we did before, mixing it in to get that lovely paint going. Just grabbing all of that pigment there, making sure we're not wasting any. We've got a lovely rich orange there, like a sunburst orange. Okay, so just mixing and mixing. It just takes a minute just to mix it up. It's not long at all. And then you've got yourself a lovely paint to work with. So there we go. Now I'm going to pop this, first of all, I'm going to pop this down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a kind of a flowing blend, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. So I'm putting the orange down first because it's our lightest colour. Both sides. Adding a bit more pigment where you want it nice and rich, and if you want it very pale and desaturated, you just add more water. Okay, gone out the lines a bit there, but it doesn't matter. Right, so once you've done that, clean off your brush, go back to the red that you created and pick some up. So just keep kind of going in, mixing it up, making sure it's nice and melty. And then come in underneath, so it's going to look like the red has come underneath this string of pearls here, and it's going to blend itself in with the beautiful orangey yellow. So let's just keep adding, building up, making sure it's nice and vibrant, slowly bringing it down toward the yellow, and as soon as it hits the yellow, you'll see the magic happen. So here we go. We're touching the yellow now, and you can see that the water is actually taking it all through the yellow and taking the yellow all up through the red. You don't really need to do anything at all. The water does it all for you. But if you want, you can go in there and mess around with it a little with the tip of your paintbrush. But it's absolutely fantastic just watching how the water takes it and merges it together. Very smooth, very kind of organically, rather than leaving any harsh lines, blending lines there. So we're going to go in again on the other side so you can see it one more time. So taking some more red. I'm going to fill in our area. So if you are doing this particular technique, you do have to work quite quickly because obviously your yellow will start to dry and we want it to be nice and wet so that it flows and they merge together just like this. Absolutely love it when they hit each other. They just go wherever they want to go. Okay, so there we have a beautiful painterly, very watercolour washy kind of look to that, and we've created this with just a little bit of chalk pastel dust. Who would have thought? Just washing off the brush, going to push the yellow a little more. You can mess around with it until you're happy. You can put more yellow down if you want. Just pop a little bit more here, dot it in, there we go. So that's how you make an actual paint or paste with a chalk pastel, particularly these Faber Castell ones. They contain so much high quality pigment that you don't find that they desaturate as you add the water. They're still super bold, as you can see. So that's that particular technique. So you can just, if you are using a plate or what have you, you can just get a piece of kitchen paper and just wipe it up like that, good as new. Okay, so the next technique is where you actually apply the water onto the stick itself. Now, some people won't prefer this technique because they might think that it will change the integrity of the pastel stick. That's what I'm trying to say. It might become weaker. I don't know. There's no real kind of research into whether that will happen or not. Some people say it does, some people say it doesn't, but it's totally up to you. It's just like adding paint onto the tip of a water-soluble pencil. So that is what you can do if you want to paint and use this technique in colouring books that might not be as thick a paper as this postcard. So I'm going to take some of this lovely turquoise colour here, and all I'm doing is dipping my paintbrush into the water and then spreading this water on the top of the pastel stick. You don't have to go all the way up, you can just do a little bit at the end, and then you can pop it onto your page. So let's go under here, I think. So this technique uses far less water than the previous one, which is why I've recommended it for colouring books that are very thin, so that you don't want your pages to buckle. And you may need to just go in and touch the water to it a couple of times to make sure it's nice and easy for you to spread around. If it's not coming off the brush very well, you've not used quite enough water. You can see there we've got a lovely colour down, very smooth. Do the same on the other side. The brush that I'm using here is a modelling brush. So it's very thin and it can get into lots of tiny spaces. And again, you can just go in, touch the stick, and then dab on the paint, and it will make it more kind of saturated with colour. Just depends what kind of finish you're looking to get, really. So that's that. I'm going to dry my brush off. Take a little bit more of a thick pigment from it and just fill it in a slightly more. There we go. So that is how you can use your paintbrush on top of a pastel stick. I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to bring in some purple because we want to try a blend, see if that will work on this as well. So I'm using this one here, this is 137. Popping some water on the stick. And bringing it up. Just dabbing it on using very tiny motions, tiny little dabs with the paintbrush. Pick up a bit more. Come in this side. This one's slightly wetter because we did it last rather than this first one, which is starting to dry. So you might need a little bit more pigment on this one. You just keep working with it really until it looks how you want it to look. Obviously, as I've mentioned, the more water you use, the more desaturated it will be, so the paler it will be. And the less water you use, the thicker it will be, but the more colourful, the more vibrant it will be. So I'm bringing this up. I've got lovely purple in the corner. I'm going to get some more of that over here, I think. And then we're going to go back to the turquoise and blend it. So blending into the purple with the lighter colour, which is what we do with pencils anyway. And there we have it. So you can blend either using this technique or using the wet paint technique on your palette. Both work equally as well. I do obviously prefer the wetter one because the water does all the work for you. It just takes all of that pigment and merges it together. But if you are using thinner paper, as I've said, you probably will go for this technique. So you can more easily control the amount of water that you're putting down. And you can layer this, you can build it up. You can see I'm building it here. I'm adding a bit more water because I can afford to do so on this beautiful cardstock. And then coming in again with the turquoise, just building the colour all the time. So there we go. That is how to create a paint from chalk pastels. Who knew? So these are my absolute favourites, the Polychromos pastel sticks, because they're not as chalky, not as grainy or dusty as other chalk pastels. They're really sturdy, really strong, and they are 100% pigment, so you know you're getting really high quality, very vibrant, saturated colours. So I really hope that you've taken a little bit of inspiration from this video. Do let me know in the comments what you think and whether you've seen chalk pastels be used as a paint before. And I'll be leaving the links in the description for you to go ahead and buy any of the things that I've been using today if you wish to. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you soon on Colour with Claire.